right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 64 of AWS Made Easy. I'm Stephen Barr, joined with Raul Subramaniam. Raul, how are you
Hey
doing?
everyone, doing very well. How about you? How was
Yeah,
your
same.
weekend?
Really well. I think we've both been a bit busy, but in a really, really good way. It's a lot of exciting things happening. So we're excited to share with you both now and over the coming couple months in the lead into reInvent all of the things we've been working on. Well,
Absolutely. There's so much happening. I think the first thing I want to talk about is the conversation we had with Jeff on Friday. If anyone's missed it, please go watch it. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about S3 Mount Point, and we had a lot of questions about what the real use cases for that particular service were really going to be. And it was really awesome for Jeff to come on the show on Friday. We did a quick 30-minute show that we posted, and I think Steven's going to post the link here.
yep.
We posted,
There we go.
or we asked Jeff all the questions that we had and some of you had, and Jeff, very patiently answered all of those for us. So go watch it if you haven't already. There might be use cases where you might find that particular service very useful. So that is an amazing end to the week, and yeah.
Yeah, I posted the link in the comments right now, so you should be able to see that. Oh, I see. The link for some reason StreamYard has not the connection to the LinkedIn comments has not been going as well lately. So I'll need to ask them about that. So I've just commented in the LinkedIn directly. That's been really
Perfect.
good. The other thing we've been working on distilling some of our past episodes into shorts. I wanted to show you one that we did with Steph Gooch. It's been really fun to reflect on these previous episodes and really get kind of the essence of what they were saying. And so please follow our LinkedIns. You'll see more of that on the coming.
Business's priority is to get stuff out the door, then they're going to do it in a way that's fast rather than cheap. That's sometimes the priority, and I think that's okay sometimes because it does depend on your company's goals. I'll use Elastic IPs as a great example. Going through and manually deleting Elastic IPs, the time that your developers will spend doing that does not probably equate to the 0.005 cents. It's probably a lot more expensive for them to go and do that. This is where a couple of things come up. So the first one is automation. So rather than manually deleting these things, can you script that out? Can you use AWS config as a way to identify and attach Elastic IPs? Utilize that to kind of highlight where you can fix it.
Cool. So we're doing more and more of those. So we hope to bring you more of those. Follow us on LinkedIn, both the Cloud Fix page and also Raul and I personally, and you can see more of those as they come out.
Exactly. I mean, that was such a fun conversation with Steph. I'm so happy we did that, and it was kind of very short and sudden in the sense that we had a rush from the New York AWS event, and then we basically went into a studio in New York and recorded this with Steph, who is in London. But it was amazing that we could do that, and a lot more coming up. Any insights about what we're doing over the next few weeks, Stephen?
Actually, Darko and Steph and myself, we are actually doing a cost optimization event together in Portland at the AWS studio there. So I'll be posting more information about that as that becomes public, but really looking forward to that one. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then
That is awesome.
What else is coming? Next week we have Lorenzo Winfrey, and he is with the on-demand compute. He has a lot to say about actually I met him at the Cloud Cost Optimization Day in Seattle a few weeks ago. It was a meetup hosted by AWS with a full-day conference, which he had hosted. And we learned a lot about Spot instances. There was also a neat thing we learned about called Carpenter, which manages Kubernetes. That's Amazon's
EKS,
open source project, EKS. And it can do a lot of neat things like move pods. It can aggregate and consolidate pods. So if you have several instances that are each lightly used, it can consolidate that into less instances that are more heavily used. We learned about Carpenter, learned about attribute-based instance allocations. The idea is rather than requesting a particular instance type, you can request the type. You can request attributes of that instance. So you need at least a certain amount of RAM, at least no more than this cost, and then let the AWS let that engine decide what type of instance you can get based on availability. So looking forward to that conversation next week. And then the week after that, we have Rick Ox, who is the lead for Compute Optimizer. So there's been a lot of Compute Optimizer announcements lately.
Correct. And I believe there's one that we're going to be discussing today.
Yes, there is. Should we jump right into that?
Why don't we do that?
Let's put that on screen. Share screen. Okay, here it is. It is Compute Optimizer, and I saw this from Rick's LinkedIn. Compute Optimizer now supports licensing cost optimization for Microsoft SQL Server. This is the idea is it's not just optimizing the compute resources, but also the utilization of licenses. So, bro, what is the impact of a Microsoft SQL Server license? Is this a cheap thing? Is this pennies or dollars or hundreds of dollars?
So SQL Server licenses, like Oracle licenses, are extraordinarily expensive in the scheme of things. And the other thing is that they operate on a per core basis. So you want to figure out the biggest core or the most performant core that you can allocate to your SQL Server and put as much load on that as possible so as to optimize your SQL Server licensing costs. And I'm really glad that the Compute Optimizer now offers those insights based on your utilization and the instance type, and the fact that they know that this is running SQL Server. You can appropriately find an instance where the core that you get, which is what is attached to the licensing, is the biggest and the most performant core that you can get your hands on.
Well, I'm looking forward to chatting with Rick to learn more about what drove this development and how people are using it, get an idea of the magnitude of savings that people are experiencing.
Yeah. In fact, this would be a good exercise. Do you want to pull up the pricing for RDS MySQL and pull up the pricing for RDS MS SQL? The delta between those two for the same instance type is effectively the licensing cost. And it'll give you a good sense for what percentage of your instance fees kind of goes off towards licensing. There we go. So RDS for MySQL, let's look at that. So let's take an R series, because that's what is relevant. Let's go down to the R series.
Okay, let's see. Here we go. Here's an R5D.16x large, $9.14.3. Let me pull up the other one, the RDS for SQL Server.
Yeah, let's pull that one up.
Okay. There we go. Let's do standard single AZ. And what was the equivalent one?
The 16XL. The R5D 16XL.
There we go.
25. So $9 and something and $25 for this one. So you can imagine the licensing fee associated with.
So almost 3 times as much.
It's almost
which is tacked on to every single hour of every single instance that you're running.
Correct. And that's basically all the licensing fees associated with every one of the cores. And that makes a big difference. So again, having fewer number of cores on your instances, yet having the cores being incredibly performant for the SQL Server workloads is a huge plus. And if the Compute Optimizer can find that for you and make that available, I mean, they've done all the hard work for you. So there's no excuse not to optimize these SQL Server instances. There's so much money to be saved by using this.
Now, my question is I wonder how that affects the relationship with Microsoft, because clearly if people are using this, it's going to reduce their licensing revenue. So do you have any insights on that, or should we save that one for Rick?
Let's leave that one for Rick. But I would assume that a lot of customers would be saving tons on their licensing fees.
All right. Well, looking at this article in its totality, from the ratings and review perspective, that's one of our big features of the show. We rate and we review AWS articles on the scale of 1 cloud to 5, and then also, does it simplify or does it add complexity to your life? So those are the 2 dimensions we've determined out of all the ways we can evaluate an article. Is it 1 to 5 clouds, and simplify versus complexify? So in this case,
this definitely simplifies.
All right, let's pull up our simplifies graphic here. There it is. Simplifies. Okay.
Great. And on a scale of 1 to 5, I think I'd give this a 4, because Compute Optimizer is really straightforward. The recommendations are simple. You can take a look at the recommendations and go ahead and implement the fix.
And what I like about Compute Optimizer that was really, really expressed both at our EVC with AWS and also on the Cloud Cost Optimization Day where I met Lorenzo, is Compute Optimizer is very conservative. It will not do anything that affects performance. Now, clearly in this case, it can't affect performance because it's just licensing. But in general, you should think of Compute Optimizer in that respect. It's not going to recommend an instance type that's a whole lot smaller and then not tell you, oh, it's going to get a whole lot slower, your application.
Correct.
So
exactly.
Compute Optimizer is very conservative. They do not break performance.
Exactly. So this one is relatively straightforward. I urge everyone to take a look at it and see if we can save big bucks on this licensing cost. I also wonder, we should probably speak to Yuri and figure out whether this new insight is going to show up in the Kudos dashboard, because this seems like an important item to start including over there.
So for those of you who are new to the show or maybe missed that, episode 60, so 4 episodes ago, was with Yuri, and he said I can't pronounce his last name, Pridelko, Yuri Pridelko, and he runs the cloud intelligence dashboards, the Kudos dashboards. He's a principal TAM. We had a great discussion with him just a month ago now, and
Correct.
There's some shorts coming out on that very shortly. To use a pun, so keep an eye out for those.
Correct. And just to quickly summarize, the Kudos dashboard is basically a tool that is available from AWS. You can launch this CloudFormation stack that's readily available, so that it gives you all the insights that you need and all the visualizations you need as a QuickSight dashboard within your own account. So it looks at Kerr, it looks at Compute Optimizer, it looks at your AWS config data, and goes ahead and creates a bunch of recommendations and insights about where you're spending your money and where you can save money.
All right, I'm putting a link to that, to the Kudos dashboard blog post co-authored by Yuri and Michael Herger. I'm putting that in the stream as we speak. Okay,
excellent.
It should be there. Great. All right, there it is. Again, notice there's quite a few people on stream, so thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. Please ask any questions that you have, any comments that you have, any feedback. Tell us we're yammering on, just want us to move on to the next one. Whatever you have to say, we want to hear it. So
yeah, we would love your feedback.
Yeah, so please post in the comment section. We will address that. All right, well, that's a pretty good start for clouds and to simplifies.
Correct.
Let's move on to managing cost allocation with last updated and last used timestamps. So I'll put this on display. Let's have a look. Manage cost allocation with last updated and last used timestamps. This is cost allocation tags. Now, how are these different than regular tags?
Okay, so the cost allocation tags is something that gets added by, I believe, Kerr and config, if I'm not mistaken. But now they've added 2 more attributes to those tags. and that is the last used and the last updated. And this becomes incredibly valuable because almost every single time you're basically trying to figure out what resources got used or not used over the last um, uh, 90 days or 60 days or whatever the period is that you're actually evaluating stuff on. So having this tag readily be available to you and just being able to run a simple query on that tag makes a big difference. In the past, we've had to make queries into AWS config to understand the resource attributes, which are not available as tags before. So now that this is available as tags, I think a lot of the queries that happen in cur and config will be simplified a lot. And you now get to have even simpler dashboards. So it makes life of someone who's trying to do cost optimization really simple by having these two.
I'm just thinking I have a few blog posts that might need an update.
Yes.
Because a lot of the technique that we use is to query the cur. And so say if there's a fixed charge, like an hourly charge, and then a metered charge. Now, whether it's data or whether it's IOPS or some type of metered charge, one way that we determine idleness, and we will see this with our deep dive later, idleness on EFS, one way we determine idleness is to look at that metered charge. And so if we're getting the metered charge is nothing, but the I guess the fixed charge or the hourly charge is something, then we know that that resource is idle. And so knowing when was the last time a particular line item in the cur or a particular type of cost was incurred, that could be really useful in determining is something idle or not.
Absolutely. In fact, for all the idle resources, this actually makes a ton of sense. In fact, didn't we just publish another blog post, or we're about to come up with a blog post on another idle resource, which is DMS, correct?
Yes, that is in production. DMS, which is the database migration service. And so DMS, we have instances which are basically special purpose EC2 instances, and they run migration tasks. But if they are, that's where you compare, again, you'll have the hourly cost for running the instance, but then if there's no task running, then it's going to be idle. If there hasn't been a task that's ran in the past 90 days, that's going to be idle.
Correct. So in all of these scenarios, just having these tags and running queries based on the tags makes so much sense. So I would give this one a simplifies as well.
There we go. Simplifies. And what I do like, which is really helpful, it tells you exactly how to get started, which is updating these permissions. That's good to know. And it points
Correct.
you to a more deeper article on understanding these cost allocation tags. It's really important to know exactly what you're working with. So this is really neat. Shows us last used month, last used date. So this is going to be really useful. I can see, we're definitely going to use it.
100%. You should see a CloudFix update coming up shortly with a stack update that changes the way these particular queries actually run. So we're actually looking forward to pushing these out soon.
All right. So then in terms of number of clouds, where do you say this sits?
Oh, this is definitely a 4.5 because it makes it so much easier. I think one of the biggest struggles a lot of other folks have is the kind of complicated Athena queries you have to write to be able to merge the data that's sitting in cur and in config, and sometimes just literally make calls into the resources themselves to actually gather all the data you need. This simplifies things tremendously. There's one place that you can go and get all the data you need.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I was thinking about this as we were doing this review process. I've been doing a review of the show we've had. We're coming up on, actually we may have passed 200 articles reviewed, rated, ranked. It's exciting to think about. There's been very few 5s. I think may have been 2.
Yeah, I think there were about 2 5s that we gave. I'm trying to remember which one we gave the 5 for.
Let me look at one of my spreadsheets here. Here we go. We had a 5, and this was a historic occasion. We had a 5 Here we go. This was the AWS cost anomaly detection.
All right.
Adds account name and other important details. This was episode 33. So it's been almost 30 episodes since a 5. I'll post that
Right.
in the comments for posterity. This, if you want to see a 5 cloud article, here we go. Here is a 5 cloud article. Here we go.
This one is close, but yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. But before we do, we have a question from the audience. Let's see.
Let's put that up.
Absolutely. Here we go. And the question is there a trial version of CloudFix? The question, well.
Yeah, so actually the assessments in CloudFix are absolutely free. You can get started pretty much with no friction. You can log into the CloudFix site. You can sign up and onboard your accounts. There's a help tutorial inside on how to navigate through CloudFix. Once you onboard your accounts, it scans and finds all the savings for you. And the assessment report is absolutely free. And once you do that, then you can figure out where and what you want to kind of optimize with automation. And that's where we can help you figure out the right solution for you.
Absolutely. And for you who asked the question, please reach out to Raul and I. If you'd like more information, happy to have a chat with you. And yeah, it's really neat. What we're doing is totally transparent, and our blog series explains all the different finders and fixers that we do, and we stick as close as we can to all the AWS recommended approaches of finding, determining, and then ultimately remediating, fixing these idle resources, these incorrectly provisioned resources. There's lots of different categories. So have a look at our blog series, and I'll post the link in a moment. So thank you for the question.
Awesome.
All right. Well, speaking of CloudFix, why don't we take a quick break, and we come back. We will be on the next article.
Sounds good.
We will be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because CloudFix is AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost-saving opportunities and not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the button to start saving now.
Okay, we are back. So the next one we wanted
Awesome.
to share is Amazon QuickSight adds scheduled and programmatic export to to Excel format. I'm putting this here, and let's put the link in the comments, and I'll put that separately in the LinkedIn comments. Here we go.
Correct. And the reason why this caught my attention was literally yesterday. I was trying to explore ChatGPT and and some of its capabilities to upload files and have it analyze it. And I was wondering whether we could take some of our really sophisticated QuickSight dashboards, whether it be Kudos or any of the other dashboards that we have, upload that and have a solution like ChatGPT automatically analyze it and tell me the 3 things that I should focus on right now. Right? I mean, I think marrying a lot of these tools makes sense and simplifying life, because invariably some of these BI dashboards get very complicated, and it's good to have a system that can parse it, understand it, and give you the 2 or 3 simple takeaways that you want to act on right away. So I was attempting that, and I was trying to figure out how to do this. And just then I came across this announcement, which makes this export really simple of a QuickSight dashboard, because a lot of the data that we have in our dashboards is sitting in Spice, which is the analytics layer or the OLAP cubes, basically, which have all the data in them. And so since the data is sitting in Spice, you don't have direct access to it. You can either write Athena queries, which again can end up becoming very expensive. So now that we are able to export the dashboards as Excel, if you upload them into a solution like ChatGPT, I think you might be in for some very interesting results and outcomes. So as I try this out this weekend, I will share the results of what these capabilities are and how good or bad the QuickSight exports are. But I think being able to, one request that I would have for this team is, given that you have Spice available as a layer, if there was a simpler way to export this data, that would be neat. And if you haven't tried something called QuickSight Q, I would recommend that you try it out. QuickSight Q is the QuickSight inbuilt AI that addresses questions, but it's not as simple or straightforward as something like ChatGPT, where you just upload all the data or the data is available to it. You have to basically create topics. The topics have to be attached to data sources that have to be imported into it and indexed, and then you have to label all the topics for synonyms and things like that. So it's a little more work oriented. I'm hoping that QuickSight Q will have LLM support soon enough, but right now, as it stands, you can also use QuickSight Q to ask natural language questions around your data, whether it be your cost optimization data. By the way, cost optimization data is available as a standard topic in QuickSight Q. So when you start your first topic, one of the samples that you can actually install is the one for cost optimization, where it'll pull out your data from Kerr and anywhere else and create a natural language processing interface to ask questions about your costs, which is pretty neat.
Now, if you are trying QuickSight Q, remember it is priced. There's a separate higher level for QuickSight Q. So if you give it a try, just remember to turn that off if you're not going to continue using it. I gave a little bit of extra money to AWS for a month or two before I remembered to do that. So make sure to turn off QuickSight Q if you don't continually use it. It is a bit of a premium over the standard QuickSight.
That's right. But it's incredibly valuable when you have tons of data and you're struggling to parse through it. You can just ask questions like a chatbot, and it gives you the answers.
Yeah, it is really neat how AI is kind of pervading and giving us these much better levels of abstraction, right? Where we're not looking at a table of summary statistics and then trying to understand the story or put together a story based on statistical intuition, which is a good thing and it's a good skill.
I agree.
But being able to get a higher level view that isn't subject to your own biases or preconceived notions is also really powerful.
Absolutely. So I actually love this. So just coming back to this particular feature, I absolutely love it. I'd give it a 4. And I think good question on simplify. I think I'd be neutral on this, whether it's in terms of whether it simplifies or not. I think there's one aspect, like just one, how do I phrase it? If I put on my product management hat, in an ideal world, I would like every customer to come onto the QuickSight dashboard and be able to slice and dice the data as they need it. Okay. The fact that someone else needs an Excel sheet and are consuming it in that form, and then they'll be slicing and dicing the data there, that data is going to get inconsistent in a day. If you have your cost optimization dashboard or whatever, at some point that Excel file becomes defunct, right? Now you're going to constantly keep generating these exports. I would think it would be easier to just log into QuickSight and get all the data you want. Now, I see cases like the one I just said, where I want to take this data and import it into ChatGPT and ask questions, where that makes sense. So I'm a little torn, which is why I said it's neutral. But I guess if it simplifies making decisions, then it's a good thing.
I like well, first, I think the neutral one is appropriate. I'm reminded of many times where you design this great product, and the first question when you get to a certain level is, how do I get this into Office? And you think, oh. But then zooming out, and you want to be pragmatic, the value here is in the data. And if this gets the data in front of the people who need to have the data, then that's a good thing. And
agree.
I'm so glad there's not an import. It's just an export.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, QuickSight dashboards can import data from a whole lot of different data sources as well. Or Athena can, and you can dump it into S3 if you wanted it. So you do have that option if you really wanted to do that.
yes, but hopefully these Excel spreadsheets that come out of this can then not be, because this is all summary statistics. So if you changed a number, how would you project that change back into the underlying statistics? Yeah, neutral. I like that.
Yep. But the article is definitely very well written and the details are great. The API specifications, all of that are very well explained. So this should be relatively straightforward for anyone to try out and use.
All right, great. Well, I think that's it for that one. We had one more, didn't we?
I think we did have one more.
Well, there was the honeycomb one, or HoneyCode.
Yes.
Let's pull that
HoneyComb.
up.
Yes.
HoneyCode ending soon FAQ. I'm not familiar with HoneyCode. What is HoneyCode?
Okay. So HoneyCode is a service. Was this HoneyCode? Yeah. So HoneyCode is, let's pull up AWS HoneyCode.
I am bringing that up now. Here we go. HoneyCode. Oh, honeycode.aws. Here it is.
Right. So this was supposed to be one of the no-code or low-code solutions that was created by AWS to basically simplify building straightforward apps. You could integrate it with Zapier. You could, basically create internal portals with it, with data coming in from different data sources, and use that as a simple app. So think of it as a simple CRUD app layer on top of your data. And this data would then be available.
Ooh.
But now they've decided that there's not much traction to it. So I think they are shutting it down.
Yeah, it looks like, according to the website, they're going to end the beta service, and existing customers will be able to use it as normal until February 29th, 2024, when the service will be discontinued.
Correct. So there's a lot of heads up that has been given for this particular service to be shut down. And I think the way it was designed, it would primarily be used only for internal purposes. It was not really meant to be an external facing solution. So shouldn't be too much of an impact for most, but yeah, it's something to watch out for if you're using it internally.
And I guess low code, no code in general, I mean, that is a really, really hard thing to target, right? Because you're trying to manage complexity, the underlying complexity and the infinite freedom of a programming language with a limited UI that by nature is supposed to be much more restricted. And so either you get UI complexity or you feel too restricted, or, and what often happens with low or no code frameworks, you have a certain no code node, which is where you stuff all of your code that goes in there and allows you to kind of break out of the paradigm and do some actual code where you can't do it within the paradigm of the framework. So that's where I've often seen these evolving, and it's really hard to get that abstraction layer exactly right.
Yeah, I think this was a very interesting service. I had actually thought, this solution would end up becoming something like a way to stitch together a whole bunch of services. But this turned out to be something like a layer on top of Access. The old school Microsoft Access kind of use cases where you had simple CRUD solutions over standard databases or object stores, or object models. And I think that's where it kind of faltered because very few people are actually using those old school paradigms anymore. However, I have actually seen the step function team and the app flow teams step up in terms of their roadmap to kind of bridge that gap of low code, no code solutions, where if you look at the number of adapters that are now available in step functions or the number of solutions that are now integrated with Airflow, it's actually pretty amazing. And then also when you combine that with EventBridge and all the adapters that are available for EventBridge, that ecosystem is starting to evolve into a very straightforward, let's stitch together a bunch of services and make them talk to each other approach. So I think if you haven't taken a look at that, you should. There's an amazing AWS Step Function Studio, which really makes it simple to stitch together a bunch of these services and get your flows working. So if you haven't checked it out yet, take a look at it. I think it would make a lot of solutions really simple.
Here it is, the AWS Step Functions Workflow Studio.
Correct.
And step functions have been very, very well. I mean, they're great. I really like the idea of being able to drag and drop and understand how these. You can use lambdas. You can have a lot of lambdas triggered by a step function.
Correct.
It's really exciting. I think a lot of these learnings from part of developing these no-code, low-code solutions is to understand what the right abstraction level is. And so I think there's always going to be good learnings from this process, whether or not the product itself continues.
I completely agree with that. I think there has been a ton of learning. I think AWS does a pretty neat job of taking feedback, understanding what worked, what failed, and then incorporating those insights into either other products or into new products that they are going to create. So, yeah. So I just wanted to put this out as a heads up for anyone who's using it internally. Please be aware of the timelines. The solution is going away, so you should make plans or alternate plans for it.
Awesome. All right. Well, goodbye, Honeycomb. I think it's been really interesting. So, okay. Well, the next one we have is from SageMaker. So let's pull this one up. SageMaker. Oh, let me put this back on screen. SageMaker announces preview of GPU CPU profiler tooling for deep learning model development. So this is interesting. With this new capability, you'll be able to access granular compute hardware related profiling insights for optimizing model training performance. The reason I think we put this one today is that this is a huge driver of cost when you're doing a lot of machine learning. Is just these GPU instances are expensive.
Great. Why don't we do this? Why don't we start with pulling up the pricing?
All right.
For a Trainium 1, do they have the equivalent of a 16XL?
One moment here. Let's see. That's pricing, Trainium 1 on demand. Okay.
Wait, can we bring it up on the screen?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So let's look at the there we go. We need to look at the pricing. On-demand pricing.
Oh, where is the price?
On-demand hourly rate. There it is.
Yeah, TRN1. There we go. 32x large, 2150.
Correct. So this is an incredibly expensive machine to run on an hourly basis. And is there a TRN2 as well?
I don't think there is a TRN2 yet. No,
there was a second generation. There isn't one, right? Okay.
Then they also the GPU instances, right? So we're thinking about the P4.
Yeah. So let's look at the P4. Though I think those are now they are not the most performant. I think So P4D, that's a $32 instance. So all incredibly expensive instances to kind of run your machine learning models on.
The G5. Really look at some expensive instances here. Well, this is not as bad. The G5.48x large at 16.
Got it. Yeah, but if you're training models, you're not going to be using G5s, are you? You're going to be using the Trainiums or the Inferentiums. How are the Inferentiums?
Here's the Inf2 series. So the most expensive Inferentium is 12.98.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a lot less demanding.
Correct. The Trainiums are really the the most demanding ones, because you're going to be using up as much compute as possible to train those models. So again, I think it's really important to understand how your models are using up the GPUs, and if you can optimize performance, use every core available to you, use every, maximize on the flops that are available to you on that particular machine. That's what is going to allow you to create the models faster, finish up your computes in a shorter amount of time, and really optimize your workload. And sometimes you have to go back and understand how you've written up your model tuning and tune out the performance for those. So really gives you a lot of insights to help you do that.
Yep, and sometimes they're always surprising. Where you find that maybe you're wasting time in a big array copy that you didn't need to make, or inadvertently realize you're copying an array that you could have just accessed in parallel.
Yeah, actually, one of the other scenarios that you see very commonly with LLMs is that people are using GPUs or certain machines which don't have enough memory available in VRAM. So if you don't have the right sized instances with enough VRAM, sometimes you will find that the performance is throttled significantly because your CPU is just spending, or your processor is spending a lot of time just moving data in and out of memory and really not performing up to its potential. So given that you can now profile all of this, you can figure out where the bottlenecks are and fix them with either the right instance size, or you might have to tune your code in a certain way to make the most of the processor that's available to you.
Yeah, maybe subdivide your matrices in a different chunk size in order to utilize the geometry of the RAM better.
Exactly.
All right. Well, how should we rate this one?
This is definitely a 4 cloud solution, and it simplifies because, again, it gives you insights into a black box that no one really knew how to optimize, and now you have profile data which allows you to optimize it. So definitely,
and I do like it does accompany. It is accompanied by a much more comprehensive blog post that was also just released 24th, so just a couple of days ago, which gives you an example of how to write code, how to profile it using the SMPPY library, the context manager SMPPY. So you annotate functions, and so that allows you to then, when you're looking at the memory, you can figure out where certain things are happening.
Correct.
So cool. If you are deep into the machine learning space, hopefully this helps you reduce your costs and use your resources effectively. All right.
Great.
Well, I think it's time for the deep dive. We're going to be talking about EFS, reducing EFS file systems. I want to pull up the blog post for that. So if you always Google CloudFix EFS idle, you can see our most recent blog post on this. This is delete idle volumes to save 10% or more on your EFS costs. I'm going to put the link into LinkedIn right now, and also into the comments. I have to figure out why StreamYard is not forwarding our comments into the LinkedIn discussion. Let's see. I'll put that. All right. So now it is in LinkedIn as well. Okay. So let's do a deep dive on how this works. There we go. Let's use the special effects here. I'm going to move this camera a little bit. There we go. 1 second here. Oh, other way. Sorry. Still getting used to this thinking geometrically backwards. Some people are really, really good at it. I'm getting there. All right. Removing idle EFS volumes. So EFS. And so it has the green series logo. So this is, what do you call it? Yeah. The green logo is taken out. Let me move this back a little bit. 1 second. And let me zoom out. There we go. Nope. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. Here we go. So EFS. EFS is a managed NFS service. And so we have, thinking about the conversation we just had with Jeff, right? An alternative to EFS could be S3 mount point. Now, S3 mount point it's still S3. It's not POSIX compliant. So you don't have permissions. You don't have that sort of thing. So the advantages of EFS is if you have something that's written that is taking advantage of a native file system, you don't want another layer of abstraction. You just want a giant file system that you have regular access to as if you were just mounting it over a network. EFS, that's what you want.
Correct.
EFS pricing. So EFS pricing is actually, it's somewhat expensive. So looking at EFS standard, it is 30 cents per gigabyte. And then if you look at, there is infrequent access tiers that go with it. So there's EFS infrequent access, and then there's also different zones that you can have. So you can either have one zone or multi-zone EFS, depending on how much resiliency you want. So let's see. And so here is our blog post about EFS intelligent tiering. And so the idea is with EFS intelligent tiering, you can have it switch automatically between the infrequent access or the standard access tiers. It's not quite as sophisticated as S3 intelligent tiering in that there's only 2 tiers and it won't switch between single and multi AZ, but it will switch between them. But we're looking at kind of the next level, which is if you're not using an EFS file system at all, then you just want to snapshot it and remove it. Okay, so here is how EFS intelligent tiering works. You really can only go up or down within from that on the access frequency dimension, and you're kind of locked into either one zone or standard from the beginning. All right. So the next thing you want to do, I guess going over the flowchart here, we want to determine if an EFS volume is idle. And there's a couple different ways to do that. Let me look at my chart here. So you want to look and see, is the volume active or inactive? And the way we're looking at that is to see, is it mounted? So you can think about this as your network drive, like an SMB share. Is it connected to something? Now, if it is connected, it still might be inactive if it's not actually getting used. So this is the flowchart that we use to determine is an EFS volume active or not. Here we go. But give me 1 second here. I'm going to adjust one thing on the setup so it looks a little better. Hold on for 1 second. Let me put the EFS article on the screen for a second. There we go. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. It was getting tricky to have my head in the shot behind what I wanted to see. There we go. Okay. That's better. Sorry about that. Okay. So here is, let's put this back in this view. Okay. So we have the cur query. Apologies here. There we go. Okay. So we have the cur query output, which is how we want to find EFS volumes. And then we want to, this is how we check for active mounts. You can use the EFS describe mount targets command, and that will return you an object which describes is it mounted or not. And we want to, so if you do have one, it'll be that upper JSON, this mount targets. If you don't have any mount targets, it will be that lower JSON. Okay, so here we are in the flowchart. We want to see, is there active mounts or not? So we're in the no active mounts branch. If you get that empty list, back, you can say, okay, the volume is inactive. So that's that the upper branch. If there is an active mount, we want to say, okay, well, let's check the most recent one. So when was the most recent active mount deleted? And so if there was an active mount within 30 days, we're going to consider that still active. And so that's what this cloud trail command is. So it's kind of interesting. We have to use the cur data the CloudTrail data. We'll be using CloudWatch and also the EFS APIs to kind of get a complete picture of, is this active or not?
This is something where the tagging that we just talked about is probably going to become useful. We are going to be diving a little deeper into figuring out where the taggings are going to change and make all of this a lot simpler. But right now you have to, again, access this data across multiple different services. But hopefully the tagging will solve that problem. And once we use the last used and the last updated fields, this query actually becomes way simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, okay, so determine if an EFS volume is idle. Okay, so this is the other part of the flowchart where there is an active mount. We want to figure out, is it an active mount that people actually sending data over this active mount? So maybe the file system is mounted, but it isn't mounted. And here's what Raul, what you were just getting at. We could have this metric statistic called client connections. So even if there is an active mount, there's no metered throughput. There's one called client connections, and there's another one called metered IO bytes. And this is documented in the blog post. And so what we were doing is CloudWatch get this particular metric, but maybe, well, like you said, with the new cost allocation tags, we can just look and say, oh, was there no charge for metered IO bytes in the last 30 days?
Right.
That's going to make it a lot easier.
Correct.
But under the CloudWatch paradigm, we do this query, and what we're looking for is this yellow arrow where sum is 0. So there's no client connections. There's no metered IO bytes. And so that's going to tell us that it's idle. Okay, so these are the two ways we can determine, is a branch idle. So now that they're idle, let's remove it. The easy way is with CloudFix. So we've got all this automation set up, and not just the automation, but the tagging, the backups, to make sure that it all goes smoothly, thinking through all the corner cases. We always present the core of how to find and how to snapshot. Just the advantage of CloudFix, it's been tried, it's been tested. We've done it lots and lots of times, both internally and with customer accounts. So this is by far the easiest way. Use CloudFix. Okay. What we want to do is create a backup vault. And I want to go back for a second to the pricing page. If you look at the pricing all the way in the beginning here, EFS standard, 30 cents per gigabyte. But a backup of an EFS volume is 1 cent per gigabyte. So 30x reduction is what we're targeting here. For EFS volumes, we never want to lose any information. You never know if you had something important there. That's the one thing you can't get back if you delete. So we're going to create an AWS backup vault using this command. And then we are going to, before you can actually create your backup, you want to delete the active mounts if there are any. So this is the commands that you'd want to use to delete your active mounts. It's similar to an ELB, right, where you have to delete the targets before you can delete the ELB. Same thing with the EFS. You want to delete the active mounts before you can then snapshot and delete the volume. Correct. Once you have deleted the active mount, you can then start this backup job. Now, there's a start backup job, and then you want to query the status of the backup job repeatedly to make sure it finished. And then once that's done, you can call the EFS delete file system command, and that will delete the EFS file system. And then since you have that snapshot in place, what you end up happening is versus standard, you are at a 30x reduction. So that's really good for no data loss, and EFS snapshots are easy to restore. If you did realize somewhere down the road that you had something very valuable on that store, you still have that data. You still have, if you set up your tags correctly, you still know what that was last associated with. Maybe that EFS volume was attached to a certain Lambda function that you needed some data off of. So using your tags, you can figure out that association, and then you have that data, but you're not paying the EFS cost, which is quite expensive.
Correct.
All right. Well, that is our EFS idle finder fixer. I'm going to adjust my camera angles for these presentations. It's been a little while since I did a deep dive, so apologies for that. I think what I'll do is I'll make the presentation on the other side instead of trying to scoot over that way. But live production, we are learning as we go.
Correct. And if you have tips for us to do this better, please do let us know. We would love to get your feedback and your thoughts on the show. If there are other topics that you would like us to cover, please do let us know. We will do a better job of posting future guests that are going to be coming on the show and the details about them. So if you have relevant questions, you can post those in advance on the AWS event itself, on LinkedIn or on the LinkedIn events page or on the CloudFix page, or just reach out to us and ask the questions. We'll make sure to get those questions to the experts and get you those answers.
Definitely. Lorenzo's event should be posted by tomorrow at the latest. And so please have a look out for that. Ask him some questions. He's extremely knowledgeable. And then as well for Rick, we'll post that as well. So if you have any compute optimizer questions, be sure to submit those. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. They really appreciate your continued support and yep, happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. See you all next week. Bye.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry because CloudFix fixers are AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost savings opportunities and doesn't just find them. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part is that it works non-stop. See for yourself. Click on the button to get a free demonstration of CloudFix and stop overspending on